Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode here on MIgardener. So, what do I have for you all today, other than a worm bin? Yes, I'm going to be starting my worms. I'm so excited to do this because it's been highly requested. Now, I ordered my worms from Uncle Jim's Worm Farm at www.unclejimswormfarm.com. There will be a link, as always, in the description box below. Hopefully you all will check him out. He has very fair prices, really the best on the internet. I ordered 5,000 red wigglers. This is going to be your most common type of composting worm, but you can use worms right from your yard. You can use some worms called Alabama jumpers. You can use just your basic night crawlers. You know, there's so many different options that you can use. I'm going to bring you all in close because I have the worm farm set up, and before I put my worms in, I want to show you my setup because you probably can't see it from over there, and there's some specifics that you're going to want to do when you're setting up your worm farm. So if you want to see a different version of this, like more like a Worm Factory 360, those cost like $105. Now, I don't know about you, but I try to do things as cost effective as possible. And if there's a cost effective method that works just as good, I'm going to choose that method. As we always talk about, I try to save money and have fun and grow food better. So as long as I'm doing that, that is all that matters. So along the lines of this worm bin, this is in one of those 15-gallon totes here. And you can get these at pretty much any store. It's a Rubbermaid tote, and they're really good quality. They're very durable, and that's kind of what you want. And also, I'm going to come in, I have some holes drilled, but I know you can't see them because it's backlit because I don't have that much light in this room. But the reason why we're in this room is not just because it's my workroom, but because it's warm. It has our water heater here, so it heats up this room very, very well. And that is key for these worms because red wigglers like temperatures between 40 degrees Fahrenheit and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Any hotter and they will go dormant, any colder and they'll go dormant. So you want to keep in that range, preferably on the warmer side, of probably 50 degrees. You want to be 50 and above and no hotter than 70. So that's going to be your key vermicomposting temperature. So basically what I have in this bucket here that I'll show you in a little bit is just some damp sphagnum peat moss, and that's gonna be my base. I have some of that mixed with a little bit of just regular composted scraps that I have from my yard. And this is key because you really don't need a whole lot of starter material, but you want to have some sort of kind of native soil so they don't feel like they're just thrown into a box of scraps. And so I have half of this filled with a sphagnum peat moss, and I have kind of a 1-to-1 ratio of sphagnum peat moss to compost. So that way they have enough kind of actual soil so they don't feel like they're out of their natural element here. So come on in close and I'll show you this method. And there's also another method that I was going to tell you, but I lost track. It is going to be in a link right here. You can click that, and that is using 5-gallon buckets. So that's a great method as well. And it's also actually a free method versus this method you need to buy the tote, which is I find it's a little bit better because you can store a lot more in this. 15 gallons versus 5, you can get 3 times more worm castings in a setup. So coming in close and I'll show you my setup here. All right, so in this setup you see the damp worm bed here. This is the worm bedding, and you don't need to be too light on the worm bedding as much as you want because they're going to still break this down. This is going to be broken down in probably about 3 or 4 weeks. This will be converted into some wonderful vermicompost. But you can see that it's nice and dark, but that's because it's wet. If it dries out, it's actually going to become a lighter material because it's actually all this sphagnum peat moss right here. See, sphagnum peat moss. But you can also use cocoa coir, and you can also use, I've seen people use a 1-to-1 ratio of shredded newspaper to compost, but you need some of that soil in here because that is what makes this not as foreign, and it stresses out the worms a lot less. So then once you have your worm bedding material in here, you also want to drill some holes. I drilled 7 holes with a 1/2-inch drill bit here. This 1/2-inch drill bit is key because it allows a lot of drainage because water does form in the bottom of the bin as you put in scraps, or as just the worms break down material. Some urine is excreted through the worms, as well as the water from the scraps. So you want to make sure that that water has somewhere to drain so it does not drown your worms in your bin. However, you want to make sure that it is wet enough that it's like a damp sponge. See, I have this here where I can just squeeze out a little bit of water, and that, I mean, you want a couple drops. If you really, really squeeze it, you want just a couple drops to come out. And that is exactly how damp you want it to be. Then what you want to do is you want to take the same drill bit, the 1/2-inch drill bit, and drill some holes all the way around the edge here. This is going to give good aeration, and it's going to allow air circulation to get in all these holes, because anything that does not compost right away has a chance of going anaerobic. And since you don't want it to go anaerobic and create methane, because worms hate methane, you want good aeration for good air circulation to come in and out of your worm bucket. On top of that, I also have a lid here. This lid can be fit right on top, so you still have underneath, you still have the holes that are not being covered up, so there's air circulation coming in that way, and you can also have lots of air coming in this way. This also provides shade for your worms, so that worms can come right up and compost the top. Because one thing that you'll find out is that if you leave it just like this, you'll have a layer here that's never going to get composted, because worms do not like light. And so if you have them in a dark location, they're going to come up and do this. For instance, this room that we're in right here will never be turned on. I mean, we hardly ever use this room other than small working projects that we have, or getting the bikes out in the springtime, or checking the breaker box. You know, we have just our very basic necessities in here. So we really don't ever visit this room very much. So it's going to be dark anyways. But if you're in a room that you visit a lot, very often, like a garage, or you know, a kitchen, if you have a kitchen composter, it's a great place to put your worm bin, because you can just readily throw your scraps right in. However, some people aren't okay with that because you got worms in your kitchen. But we're just going to have it down in this room here, so I'm going to keep that on. But in normal circumstance, this is going to keep it shaded so that the worms can come up and compost this top layer here, so you never have to worry about turning your compost, because a lot of people have to take this top layer and turn it over so that the worms can compost all of it. Okay, so when you have your worms, you're going to want to peel this top layer back. You want to put them down pretty far so that they don't feel, again, like they're just thrown into a bucket. You want them to feel like they're in a very natural element here. So you're going to want to make a bed on one edge. That's kind of probably 3 inches from the bottom. See, you can see the bottom there. There's bottom right there. And I'm going to have it about maybe 1 to 2 inches of decent material there. That way they don't necessarily crawl all the way down to the bottom. They don't necessarily crawl all the way up to the top. They're going to kind of be suspended in their bedding material for now. Then what you're going to do is just take all of your worms. Do not move your worms around. They like to be put all together. Now with 5,000 worms, you can make a double setup here. There's going to be quite a few worms for this setup, but it's going to mean that they're going to compost through their material a lot quicker. So I don't think I do have a couple more worms in there. Right, so now that you have your worms in your worm bin here, we got our worms poured in, and they do come in a sphagnum peat moss mixture, but they're rather, they're rather kind of dormant right now because they just traveled through very cold temperatures. But they're going to wake up. Once they feel this warmth, they're going to wake up, and I'm just going to cover them up with just a little bit of that bedding material there. The worms don't like to be spread out right away. They like to be kind of in a colony and spread out as they populate. So one thing that we're going to do is we're going to just dig a hole here, and then we've prepared your worm food. Now a lot of people are asking, what can you add your worms? This stuff right here is just basically blended up scraps. I have banana peels, I have a lettuce leaf there that just kind of never got blended up. And you want to give them things that you would put in your compost pile. Don't give them meat, don't give them greasy stuff. You want to give them stuff that you would put in your compost pile, because just like your compost pile is full of decomposers, these worms are decomposers as well. So if it doesn't go in your compost pile, don't feed it to your worms. That's your number one rule. All right, we're just going to put this right there, just a nice little slurry. Oops, you don't want that in there. That won't compost. All right. And we're just gonna Take that out. And should have brought a spatula, but we're just gonna get our hands dirty here. Yummy. All right, and all this is just banana peels, lettuce, a couple strawberries. You don't want to feed them citrus. Citrus is a little bit too acidic for them. You know, orange peels and stuff. Keep that out of your worm bin if possible. I know some people do add it, but I have heard that it is a little too acidic, and so you don't want to over acidify your soil. So now you have that kind of slurry in there. Just take it and cover it up, and that is going to entice your worms to crawl over into that little food area, that little feeding area. And you want to move your feeding area every once in a while to get them to move through the bed. So that is really all there is to it. It's not that complicated at all. I know a lot of people try to, you know, make it way more complicated than it needs to be, but really you have your drainage, you have your holes, you got your bedding, and as long as it stays moist and you have food, they're going to do great. All right, so we're going to put that on the lid and call it a day. I also thought I'd mention that if you have any worms that start crawling up the edges, don't panic. It's not a big deal. There we go. It's not a big deal if they start crawling up the edges. That just means that they're not totally acclimated yet. They're going to crawl back down. Also, if they start crawling up the edges, all you have to do is put them underneath a bright light like this shop light that I have. Just lift off this bucket and they're going to crawl back down because, like I said, they don't like the light. So in that case, don't worry. It's totally normal. They're kind of stressed. And I will say, though, that if you see them crawling up the edges after about 2 or 3 months, that either means that it's not damp enough or you don't have enough food. So make sure that you feed them well and keep it damp. Like I said, those are 2 big key things. And the last thing is that you don't have to worry about overpopulation. The worms are our strategists. So that basically means that they will lay as many eggs as the environment allows. So once they get stressed in this bin here, it's best, if you want to keep your worm population growing, to build a second bucket. And you just take some of the worms from here, transport them over to another bucket, and just basically start a second colony. And that way, the worms can continue to breed and to lay eggs, because they will not lay eggs if there's not enough space. They're very smart like that. So keep them well spaced, make sure that they are not overpopulated, and yeah, that's about it. There's really not too much else you need to know. They're very simple. And I will talk to you all later. This is MIgardener, reminding you all to grow big or go home. And I'll talk to you all later. See ya. Bye.